Dale Whitaker climbed down off a roof in Tulsa on a 101-degree afternoon, drank 2 beers, took 3 ibuprofen for his shoulder, and went to bed. He'd done that same thing for 20 years. 4 days later, his wife drove him to the emergency room because he hadn't urinated since morning. His kidneys had lost more than half their function in under a week. He was 61, and his last physical had been called normal. I'm an emergency physician, and I can usually tell within 90 seconds of walking into a room whether a man's kidneys are in trouble. Almost none of those men came in because of their kidneys. They came in for something else. A blood pressure that wouldn't come down, swollen legs, cramps at night. The kidneys were failing quietly in the background the whole time, and nobody had asked them a single question. So here's what I want to do with the next 20 minutes. I'm going to walk you up a ladder. At the bottom are the signs almost every man over 50 ignores, the ones so ordinary you'd feel silly bringing them up to a doctor. Then we climb. Each rung gets harder to explain away. And at the top are the ones where I want you off the couch and into a car, or in one specific case, not in a car at all, but on the phone with 911. By the end, you'll know which rung you're standing on and what to do about that rung. Not everything. That rung. Because here's the thing that makes kidney disease different from almost every other organ problem I see. Your heart complains. Your gut complains loudly. Your kidneys do not, because they were built with enormous spare capacity. You can lose 1/3 of your filtering power and feel completely fine. You can lose half and just feel a little tired. That's why a person can donate 1 kidney and live a full life. But it means the warning system is set almost at the end, and by the time your body finally raises its voice, you may be down to 1/4 of what you started with. The signs you'll hear about today are the quiet ones underneath, and they're all you get. The scale of this in America is not small. The Centers for Disease Control estimates roughly 35 million American adults have chronic kidney disease, and about 9 out of 10 of them do not know it. 9 out of 10. Not 9 out of 10 who don't understand it. 9 out of 10 who have never been told they have it. That's the whole reason this video exists. Let me start at the bottom of the ladder, with rung 1, because rung 1 is embarrassing. It's tiredness. Not dramatic exhaustion. The specific version I mean is this. You sleep 7 hours and you wake up feeling like you slept 4. You're not sleepy, exactly. You're flat. Every man I've ever asked about this told me the same thing. He blamed his age. Here's what's actually happening. Your kidneys do a job most people never learned about in school. They make a hormone called erythropoietin, which is the signal that tells your bone marrow to build red blood cells. Red blood cells carry oxygen. When kidney tissue starts to scar, that signal gets weaker, marrow slows down, and your blood carries less oxygen per beat. You are, in a very literal way, running your body at altitude while standing in your own kitchen. What do you do with rung 1? Nothing dramatic. You write it down, on paper, the date, hours slept, and a number from 1 to 10 for how you felt at 10 in the morning. 2 weeks of that turns a feeling into data, and data is what gets a doctor to order the right blood test instead of telling you to get more rest. And now let me handle the objection I can already hear, because I hear it in the ER constantly. Some of you are thinking, my doctor checks my blood every year, and my kidney number is fine. If something were wrong, it would have shown up by now. The standard kidney test on your annual blood work is creatinine. Creatinine is a waste product from muscle. Your muscles break down a small amount of tissue every day. That waste goes into your blood, and your kidneys filter it out. The lab measures how much is left in the blood and then runs it through a formula to estimate your filtration rate, which is what gets reported as your eGFR. Now follow the logic. That formula assumes an average amount of muscle for a person your age. So what happens to a 60-year-old who still frames houses, still lifts, still carries 50-pound bags of feed? He produces more creatinine than average, his level looks a bit high, and everyone shrugs and says it's the muscle. Or the reverse. And this is the dangerous direction. A man who has been quietly losing muscle for a decade, thin through the arms and legs, produces less creatinine than average. His number looks beautiful. It can sit at 0.9 of a milligram per deciliter, perfectly normal on paper, while his real filtration rate is well below where it should be. The test isn't lying to him. The test is measuring the wrong thing about him. That's the belief I want to break today. A normal creatinine is not the same as normal kidneys. It's an estimate built on an assumption about your body, and if your body isn't average, neither is the estimate. There is a second test that gets around this, and most men have never heard of it. It's called cystatin C. Cystatin C is a small protein made by essentially every cell in your body at a fairly steady rate, not by muscles specifically. So how much muscle you carry barely moves it. The National Kidney Foundation now recommends using cystatin C alongside creatinine to confirm kidney function when the picture is unclear, and it's an ordinary lab test covered by Medicare and most insurance when your doctor orders it for a reason. So here's your first action item, and it costs you one sentence at your next appointment. You say, "Given how much muscle I carry, could we confirm my eGFR with a cystatin C?" That one sentence has changed the picture for more men than any supplement ever will. All right. Rung 2. And this is the one you already know about, but almost certainly not for the reason you think. Getting up at night to urinate. Every man over 50 knows this one, and every man over 50 has the same explanation ready. It's the prostate. And sometimes it is. But there's a second explanation that almost nobody gets told, and it points straight at your kidneys. Healthy kidneys concentrate your urine overnight. That's a real skill, and it's one of the first ones they lose. When the deep tissue that does it starts to thin out, your kidneys need more water to move the same amount of waste, and they take that water at night. So the pattern matters more than the count. Getting up twice with a small stream that's hard to start is a plumbing story, and that's usually prostate. Getting up twice with a full, easy, pale stream is a filtering story, and that's your kidneys. Your blood pressure is supposed to fall at night. In a healthy adult, it drops about 10 to 20% while you sleep. Doctors call that dipping. It's the nightly rest period for every blood vessel you own, including the several miles of microscopic vessels inside your kidneys. Some people stop dipping. Their pressure stays up all night, or in the worst version, climbs higher at night than it is at noon. It's called nocturnal hypertension, and here's what makes it so nasty. You cannot detect it in a doctor's office. Not ever. Your office reading at 2 in the afternoon can be a beautiful 128/78, while your body spends every night at 150/90. And nobody in that building will ever know. Kidney disease and nocturnal hypertension feed each other in a loop. Struggling kidneys handle salt poorly, so salt and fluid build up during the day. Lying down at night shifts that fluid back into circulation. Pressure rises. High nighttime pressure damages the tiny vessels inside the kidney. Damaged kidneys handle salt worse. Around it goes. Think of your blood vessels as a garden hose. During the day, water's running. The hose is stiff and full. That's normal. That's the job. At night, the spigot is supposed to come down to a trickle so the rubber can relax. Nocturnal hypertension is leaving the spigot wide open, 24 hours a day, for years. Nothing bursts. The hose just gets old fast. So what do you do about a number you can't see? 2 things, and they're both practical. First, if you own a home blood pressure cuff, and you should, take a reading within 30 minutes of waking up, before coffee, before your pills, still sitting on the edge of the bed. That early morning number is the closest ordinary look you can get at your overnight pressure. Do it 7 days in a row and write it down. If your mornings are consistently running higher than your afternoons, that's worth a real conversation. Second, ask your doctor about a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor. It's a cuff you wear for a day and a night that takes readings while you sleep. It isn't exotic, and Medicare covers it in specific situations. Sometimes the fix that comes out of it is nothing more than moving one blood pressure pill from morning to bedtime under your doctor's direction. Same pill, same dose, different 8 hours of coverage. Which brings me to rung 3, and this one you can see with your own 2 eyes at the end of the day. Socks. Pull off your sock at night and look at your ankle. If there's a deep ring pressed into the skin that's still there 5 minutes later, or if you push your thumb into the front of your shin and it leaves a dent, that's fluid. Doctors call it pitting edema, and the reason it shows up at the ankle first is simple gravity. Fluid your kidneys failed to remove goes to the lowest point you own. Look at your face in the morning, too. Puffy eyelids on waking, especially alongside sock rings at night, is a classic pair. Lying flat overnight moves the fluid that spent all day in your feet up into the softest tissue you own, which is the skin around your eyes. Now, swollen ankles have several causes. Heart failure, certain blood pressure medications, particularly the calcium channel blockers, sitting in a truck for 9 hours. So one puffy evening is not a diagnosis. What matters is the trend. New swelling on both legs, worse at night, better in the morning, showing up alongside the tiredness from rung 1. That's a pattern, and patterns are what you carry to your primary care doctor. While you're there, ask for a urine albumin to creatinine ratio. Say it just like that. It's a simple urine test measuring whether protein is leaking through your kidney filters, and protein starts leaking years before your blood numbers change. It is the earliest reliable alarm we have. Yet most men over 50 with high blood pressure or diabetes have never had their urine checked at all. If you take one line to your next appointment, take that one. Rung 4. Foam. This is the visible version of that same protein leak, and it sits higher on the ladder, because when you can see it, you're further along. Everybody's urine bubbles sometimes, and bubbles pop within a few seconds. Foam does not. Real protein foam looks like the head on a poured beer. It stacks in layers, and it's still sitting there when you flush. If you're seeing that most mornings for weeks, that's not hydration, and that's not the toilet cleaner. Here's the mechanism. Your kidneys hold about 1 million tiny filtering units called nephrons, each with a membrane full of pores, sized so water and waste pass through while protein stays behind. When high pressure and high blood sugar batter that membrane year after year, the pores stretch and protein slips through. Foam in the bowl is protein that was supposed to stay in your body. Think of a coffee filter that's been used too many times and finally tears. It's still sitting in the basket, it still looks like a filter. But now the grounds are in your cup, and no amount of pouring more water through is going to fix the tear. The reason I want you to catch this rung is that this is exactly where medicine has gotten good. Protein in the urine is the trigger for a whole class of drugs that genuinely protect kidneys, including ACE inhibitors, ARBs, and the newer SGLT2 inhibitors, which slow kidney decline in people with and without diabetes. That's not a supplement claim. That's standard care. But nobody prescribes it if nobody tests you. Rung 5 is where we shift gears, because now we're going to talk about a sign that isn't in your urine at all. It's in your skin and your mouth. Rung 5 is itching and a change in how food tastes. The itching is not a rash. That's the tell. Men describe it as itching underneath the skin, worst on the back, the shins, and the forearms, worst at night, and it doesn't respond to lotion because there's nothing on the surface to treat. What's happening is that waste products your kidneys should be clearing are building up in your blood and irritating nerve endings from the inside. There's also a mineral piece. As filtration declines, phosphorus builds up, and high phosphorus is strongly associated with that deep, maddening itch. Most men blame dry winter air for years. The taste change runs on the same fuel. Urea accumulates in saliva, and men tell me 2 things. Everything tastes faintly metallic, and red meat has started tasting wrong. Steak they've eaten happily their whole lives suddenly tastes like pennies, so they quit ordering it. Nobody connects a change in dinner preference to an organ. Then the appetite fades generally. They lose 10 pounds without trying, and everyone congratulates them. And hear this part. Unintentional weight loss in your 60s and 70s is almost never good news. If your belt has gone in 2 notches and you didn't do anything to cause it, that's a reason to be seen. Here's the useful frame. Your kidneys aren't just a filter. They're the chemistry lab holding your blood in a narrow range. Sodium, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, acid balance, fluid volume. When the lab falls behind, the first things you notice aren't dramatic failures. They're small, weird sensory things, itchy shins, metal in your mouth, cramps at 2 in the morning in the calves and the arches of your feet. What do you do with rung 5? This one moves up the ladder. Rung 1 was, write it down. Rung 5 is call your primary care doctor and get seen within a couple of weeks and ask for a metabolic panel that includes phosphorus, plus that urine albumin test. Say the symptoms out loud in the room. Don't do what most men do, which is answer fine when the doctor asks how you've been, then mention the itching to your wife in the parking lot. Now rung 6, and this is a mechanism I almost never hear discussed in kidney videos, which is strange because it's specific to men and it's common. Marcus Bell coached high school football in Charlotte for 22 years. 58 years old, still on the field 3 seasons a year, still in decent shape. What brought him to the ER was back pain, he thought, was a kidney stone. It wasn't. His bladder was holding a large volume of urine he could not fully empty, and the pressure had backed up the ureters into both kidneys. Both kidneys were swollen. His creatinine was nearly double what it had been 18 months earlier. The cause was his prostate. It had been enlarging for years, the way most men's do after 50, and he had been quietly adapting the whole time. Here's the piece that matters. Almost every conversation about an enlarged prostate is about inconvenience. Nobody tells men that the same problem, left long enough, becomes a kidney problem through simple plumbing. Picture the drain line under your kitchen sink slowly narrowing with grease. First it drains a little slower. Then water stands in the basin. Then it backs up the pipe. Urine works the same direction. If the outlet is partly blocked, your bladder never fully empties, pressure rises, and eventually that pressure transmits backward to the kidneys. When they swell from it, we call it hydronephrosis, and it is one of the few causes of kidney damage that's genuinely fixable if it's caught. Relieve the obstruction and function often improves. Wait 2 more years and some of that loss is permanent. So here are the signs that this is your rung, and they're different from the ones I gave you earlier. A stream that starts slowly even when you badly need to go. A stream that stops and restarts, dribbling at the end. And the big one? The feeling that you're not finished when you're finished. That last symptom is the one men mention least and the one that matters most because it's the direct sign of urine left behind. If that's you, this is a primary care visit, and it's this month. There are 2 simple things they can do. One is a bladder scan, a small ultrasound on your lower belly right there in the office that measures how much urine is left after you go. Takes a minute, doesn't hurt. The other is blood work. So you know whether the plumbing problem has already become a filtering problem. And I want to speak to the men avoiding this exact appointment, because I know why. You don't want the exam, and you don't want the conversation. I've had that conversation with a lot of men lying on an ER gurney with a catheter in, and not one told me afterward that avoiding it had been worth it. There are medications now that shrink or relax the prostate, and procedures that didn't exist 20 years ago. The version that ends badly is the version where a man waited until his kidneys were involved. Before we climb into the top of the ladder, I want to give you the tool. I call it the 7-day kidney log, and it's 4 columns on one sheet of paper stuck to your refrigerator. Column 1, the morning blood pressure I described earlier. taken sitting on the edge of the bed before coffee and before pills. Column 2. The color of your first urine of the day. On a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is nearly clear and 5 is dark amber. Column 3. Whether there was foam still sitting there after 10 seconds, yes or no. Column 4. Your sock ring at night, yes or no. 7 mornings, 4 columns, maybe 90 seconds a day. Here's what makes this beat any single office visit. 1 reading of anything is noise. 7 days of anything is a pattern, and patterns change medical decisions. A man who says he's been a little tired lately gets reassurance. A man who lays down a sheet showing 7 straight mornings at 148/88, urine at a 4, foam on 5 of 7 days, and sock rings every night gets a workup. Same body, same doctor, entirely different appointment. Now let's go up to the rungs where the timeline changes. Rung 7. Your blood pressure has started climbing, and nobody can say why. This is the rung men are most likely to be standing on without knowing it, because it doesn't feel like anything. It looks like a note in a chart. You were controlled on 1 pill for 6 years. Now you need 2. Then 2 aren't quite enough. Everyone calls that the ordinary drift of getting older. Sometimes it is. But blood pressure that needs more and more medication is one of the most reliable signals that kidney function is slipping, because your kidneys are not a bystander in blood pressure. They are the control system. They decide how much salt and water stay in your body. When they sense less blood flow than they want, they assume the whole body is running dry and respond the only way they know how. They raise the pressure, even when it's already too high. That's the loop. Kidney damage raises blood pressure, and high blood pressure damages kidneys. 2 problems. 1 wheel. Turning. The American Heart Association puts the line where high blood pressure begins at 130/80, and that's a lower bar than a lot of men were taught. If you've been telling yourself 140 is fine because someone told you that in 1995 the standard moved, and it moved because of exactly this kind of silent damage. Rung 8 is the one I told you I'd come back to. This is Dale's rung, and it's an emergency that builds over about 72 hours. 3 things, each harmless on its own, that together take down healthy kidneys in a matter of days. The first is dehydration. Hot day, physical work, sweating hard, drinking less than you lose. The second is heavy exertion, especially the kind your body isn't used to. Hard labor in the heat, a long day of yard work, for younger men an unusually punishing workout. The third is an anti-inflammatory. Ibuprofen, naproxen. The bottle in your truck that you've never once considered a real medication? Here's why those 3 together are so much more dangerous than any one of them. Your kidneys protect their own blood supply with a small system of chemicals called prostaglandins, which keep the incoming vessel dilated when blood volume falls. That's your emergency reserve. Anti-inflammatory drugs work by blocking prostaglandins. That's how they relieve pain, and it's also how they switch off that reserve. So when you're dehydrated, exactly at the moment your kidneys need that protection most, ibuprofen takes it away. Add hard muscle work, which floods the bloodstream with breakdown products the kidneys have to clear, and you've stacked a third load on top. Any one of the 3, and you're fine. All 3 together in the same 48 hours, and healthy men in their 50s and 60s end up in my emergency department with acute kidney injury. Imagine a car engine on a hot day. Low coolant is the dehydration. Towing a trailer up a grade is the exertion. And the anti-inflammatory is somebody quietly disconnecting the radiator fan. Any 2 of those, and you make it home. Now, I'm not telling you to throw out your ibuprofen. It's a good drug and often the right choice. I'm telling you when to skip it. On a hot day, if you've been sweating hard and haven't been urinating much, that is not a day for ibuprofen. That's a day for water, shade, and acetaminophen if you need something, since acetaminophen doesn't work through that prostaglandin pathway. Same goes if you're on a blood pressure medication ending in Pril or Sartan, plus a water pill. That combination with an anti-inflammatory on a dehydrated day is a well-known setup, and it has a nickname in hospitals precisely because we see it so often. One more, because it comes up constantly, and it's completely manageable. If you're scheduled for a CT scan with contrast dye or a cardiac catheterization, that dye is cleared by your kidneys. In someone with healthy kidneys, it's a non-event. In someone with reduced function who doesn't know it, it can push things downhill. The fix is not to refuse the scan, because sometimes that scan is the most important thing happening to you that week. The fix is one question asked ahead of time. Do you have my recent kidney numbers? And should I be doing anything to prepare? They may check your function first, hold a medication for a day, or run fluids before and after. All of that works far better arranged in advance than discovered afterward. Now, the top of the ladder, where the clock is running. Rung 9. Your urine output drops sharply, or stops. Not, I'm going less than usual. I mean, it's been 8 hours, you've been drinking normally, and there's been essentially nothing. Or what does come out is dark, scant, and tea-colored. Especially after a hot day, hard work, or an illness with vomiting or diarrhea. That combination is not a wait and see. That's urgent care today at minimum, and if it comes with confusion, vomiting, or shortness of breath, it's the emergency department. Rung 10. Blood in your urine. Pink, red, or the color of cola. One episode. No pain. It clears up the next day, and you convince yourself you imagined it. Please hear me on this one. Painless blood in the urine in a man over 50 is one of the sentences that makes an emergency physician stop, because it can be the only sign of a bladder or kidney tumor, and it can be caught early enough to matter. It can also be a stone, an infection, or an enlarged prostate, and often it is. But the one thing it never is a symptom to ignore because it went away. Going away is exactly what these do. If you see blood in your urine once, you get evaluated. That time, not the next time. Call 911 and do not drive yourself if any of this happens. Severe flank pain with a fever and shaking chills, which can mean an infected, obstructed kidney and can turn septic within hours. Shortness of breath at rest, or the feeling that you can't lie flat without drowning, which can mean fluid is backed up into your lungs. New confusion in a man who's been sick for a few days. Chest pain or a heart rhythm that feels wrong, especially with known kidney disease because dangerously high potassium is a real possibility and it stops hearts. I keep saying don't drive yourself for a reason. Men in this country drive themselves to the hospital all the time, and I understand the logic. It feels faster. But if the reason you're going is a heart rhythm problem or dangerous potassium, you can lose consciousness on the way. And now there are 2 emergencies. The ambulance also starts treatment in your driveway, often 20 minutes earlier than the ER can. So let me put the whole ladder in your hand, because if you remember nothing else, remember this shape. Bottom of the ladder, write it down. Tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, and the 2-week log. Next rungs, bring it up at your next visit. Night urination with full, easy volume. Morning blood pressure running higher than afternoon. Sock rings and puffy eyelids, and foam that doesn't pop. Middle rungs, call your primary care doctor and get seen within a few weeks. Itching without a rash, metallic taste, and losing interest in meat. Unintentional weight loss, night cramps, a stream that starts slow or stops and restarts, and that feeling of never quite emptying. Upper rungs, urgent care today or the emergency department. Urine output dropping off sharply after a hot day or an illness, and any blood in your urine. Top, flank pain with fever and chills, breathlessness at rest, new confusion, chest pain. That's 911 and someone else drives. That ladder is the whole video. Where you stand on it tells you not just what's wrong, but how fast you have to move. And the speed is the more useful half. Now, let me give you the pattern that ties every single rung together, because underneath all 10 of them is one idea, and if you hold on to the idea, you don't have to memorize the list. Your kidneys don't have a warning light. They have a dimmer switch. A warning light goes from off to on. You notice it, you deal with it. A dimmer switch turns down so gradually that at no point does the room feel dark. You just find yourself squinting and you assume your eyes are getting old. Every sign in this video is that same idea in a different form. Tiredness is the dimmer on your oxygen delivery. Night urination is the dimmer on concentrating power. Swollen ankles are the dimmer on fluid control. Itching and metallic taste are the dimmer on your body's chemistry lab. Rising blood pressure is the dimmer on the control system. Foam is the dimmer on the filter itself. Nothing switched off. Everything got a little darker, one notch at a time, while you adjusted. Which means the skill you need isn't spotting a dramatic symptom. It's noticing the room isn't as bright as it used to be. That's what the 7-day log is. A light meter for a room your eyes already adapted to. And here's the hopeful part, and it's real. Scarred kidney tissue doesn't come back. But the rate at which you lose it is absolutely something you can change. And the two biggest levers are blood pressure and blood sugar. Get those right, and men who were headed for dialysis in 8 years are still doing fine in 20. That's the difference between losing your independence at 70 and keeping it into your 90s. Dale, the roofer from Tulsa, made it out. His kidneys recovered most of their function over about 3 weeks in the hospital and afterward, because acute injury caught early often does recover. And he now knows something he didn't know at 61, that the 3 ibuprofen he took at the end of a 100-degree day were the most dangerous thing he did that week, and it wasn't close. Marcus, the coach in Charlotte, had his obstruction relieved, went on medication for his prostate, and his kidney numbers came about 80% of the way back. His words to me: "Nobody ever told me the two things were connected." He'd been managing a bladder problem for 6 years with no idea he was slowly managing a kidney problem. Neither of those men did anything stupid. They did what men over 50 are taught to do, which is adapt, tough it out, and not make a fuss. That instinct works beautifully for a bad knee. It works terribly for an organ that never raises its voice. So here's what I want from you tonight. And it's one thing, not 10. Get a piece of paper, put it on your refrigerator. Tomorrow morning, before your coffee, before your pills, sit on the edge of the bed and take your blood pressure. Then look at the color of your urine and whether the foam is still sitting there after 10 seconds. And write down all 3. Do that for 7 mornings. That's it. That's the whole assignment. No diet overhaul tonight, nothing to buy. 7 mornings, 90 seconds a day. At the end of the week, you'll have what no annual physical gives you, a pattern instead of a snapshot. And if it looks like anything I described today, you take the paper to your doctor and say the 2 sentences I gave you. Can we confirm my eGFR with a cystatin C? And can we check my urine for albumin? 2 sentences and 1 sheet of paper. That's how the men who did well found out early. One last thing. If you've got a brother, a father, or a friend who's been getting up 3 times a night and blaming his prostate, send this to him. 9 out of 10 people with this condition don't know they have it, and that number only comes down when somebody says something out loud. Go take your reading in the morning. I'll see you next time.